Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our series of important conversations for this high holiday season. Our guests tonight are Katie and Larkin Tackett. They are members of our congregation, have been for a number of years. I'm blessed to say I officiated at their wedding, and so we've known each other a long time. They're here tonight to speak with us concerning issues, particularly around raising raising Jewish children of color. They have recently adopted a beautiful young, then you supply pictures for proof of what a wow, is she adorable. And her name is Leasia. Also want you to know that they are the parents as well to Ben and Maya and Naomi. Just by way of further background, Katie is the associate professor, holds the position of associate professor of practice for the Department of Special Education at the University of Texas. And Larkin is the CEO of Maya Consulting, which is a group of educators who are helping nonprofits and foundations with issues around education. So they are both educators and they are parents, and they are actually as well leaders in social justice, and Larkin being the chair of our social justice task force as well. So I am going, you didn't know this?
I didn't know he was the chair.
Yeah, sorry, Larkin. So I wanted to begin with the following, that you recently sent out a beautifully written, very affecting email about the fact that your adoption of Leasia is now complete, but that process was a challenging one and raised issues for the two of you concerning white privilege and systemic racism within that particular system that kind of reflects the general society as well. So I wanted you to address that a little bit for us and tell us about that experience and why that your thinking went in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, we were thrilled to announce it. I mean, when people have kids, including adopting, they send out announcements and say, hey, this is a joyous occasion, and it is for us. It's also complicated when I think every adoption is complicated. We've only done one, so but we've read about many of them, and it just felt like sharing an announcement and receiving congratulations and then just sort of going on with our lives would have been a missed opportunity to really explore kind of how complicated and complex it is. And as you mentioned, our being white, white parents adopting a Black child, like in light of our history, it's a moment for reflection, and certainly it's something that we do a lot. And so we thought it would be helpful to, in our announcement, sort of encourage that reflection, and thinking about what that means in the context of, the racism that has existed in our country, and how it's a moment of joy for us and a moment of heartbreak for her family, and for Leasia, that a part of her family is being torn apart, and it's just important to acknowledge that.
Do you feel that? Okay, I want to kind of isolate the racial issue. Is it a general idea that at one time it would have been, I can't say this definitively, but it would have been illegal for a white family to adopt a Black child? That vestiges of that time period continue within the adoption system? Okay, respond to that.
Yes, it would have been illegal for us to be a family at one point in time. But where I see it kind of more playing out is just the systemic racism within the child welfare system altogether. You know, if you look at the majority of kids that are being removed from their families, it usually are kids of color, particularly Black kids, and how we're just continuing to destroy Black families and brown families. And often the foster parents are white. And so just kind of how this plays out in the system from the very beginning, the removal of the kids, you know, thinking about and getting to know Leisha's parents. And first of all, we use the language, they are still her parents. No piece of paper is going to change that. Getting to know her parents and recognizing that if our situations were reversed in some ways, most likely we would never have been removed. My kids would never be removed for some of the same things that CPS was called into her life for. And so just kind of recognizing just that part of race, the racial history, and then just this idea of us adopting a Black child and then getting praised for it in a way that makes us feel like we're saviors that we are definitely not. And so it feels it's a tough balance of trying to think we love this little girl and we are so excited to be able to parent her for the rest of her life, the rest of our lives, but holding in that tension that the system was kind of rigged from the very beginning against her family.
Sure.
And the challenges that she's going to face as a Black member of her family.
Let's go down that road. Speak to some of the challenges that you anticipate in the years ahead in raising a child, raising first a child of color generally, then we'll talk about the Jewish challenges particularly.
Yeah, I mean, Katie's encouraged me and modeled for me the importance of listening to the voices of adults who have been part of transracial families and, you know, adoptions, including through child welfare. And so, I think when I listen to them, which I think is like the most important first step, there are all sorts of examples from, hair treatment to, just seeing them as fully human people that, white families and white culture, which is our culture in this country, have just struggled with. And, the reality that families like ours will mean, a Black child and, and young adult and adult will be moving in a lot of white spaces that don't necessarily see her like they do our other kids because of this history that we have in our country and this culture. And so I think that, those are like some of the ways that I think she's going to struggle, and that frankly we've got to do better and learn from the stories of of kids who have been in similar situations. And I've got examples. A couple examples I'm excited to share about what that means for our community, the Temple Beth Shalom, and and Jewish communities in general.
So, okay, I'm sorry, Kate.
Well, one thing that we try and make sure that we do is that we're not in all white spaces. That she is, and that's with our neighborhood, with where she goes to school, where we're choosing to go out to eat, everything like that. So that way she is seeing other Black people. It's more than just we're raising a Black girl, we're raising a future Black woman. And I want her to be extremely proud to be a Black woman and all that entails. And so it means for us having to be really cognizant in ways as white people that we typically don't have to be cognizant of race, and thinking about where can we go to make sure that she's not the only Black person always. And she notices these things and how powerful it is when we can make sure that we are um, helping her just have all of those cultural mirrors in a lot of different spaces. And I think, you know, the temple is a place that we want to make sure that she isn't the only Black child, or is, you know, and it's a hard situation. We've had a lot of hard conversations surrounding, you know, what does that mean to raise a Black Jewish child? Um,
Just as an easy one. How old is she?
she's 5.
Okay, so she's just at the beginning of religious school education and kindergarten and all that stuff. Okay, good. So you know, there's an interesting tension you're raising, and that is that the self. And we talked about this on a discussion that we had earlier this summer. The self perception within the Jewish community is we treat all of our children the same. Okay, so there's one issue is that really true? And the other issue, is that really good? Because the lived experience of people who are not white Jews in the outside, not only within the synagogue, but just in the outside world, is different. And we as a community, I think, are struggling with that tension. I know that the two of you are going to be helpful in helping us work through that tension. But it strikes me that this is like a dual challenge for the Jewish community. And I wonder if you had any thoughts around that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because we as all people should be, you know, aware and sensitive and ready to, you know, to take on the othering that exists in the world, right? Like we've experienced that for, you know, generations upon generations upon generations. You know, the one thing that I hear consistently from Black Jews, including those who are part of our community, is that when they show up at events, right, like when they come to the congregation services, they're consistently asked like, "Oh, welcome. We're so happy to have you here." You know, and that's sort of the least negative example. I think it exists on a continuum to like, "Oh, could you bring me, you know, something to drink?" Or, you know, it's there's, you know, stories of yeah, I mean, so lots of stories like that. And, you know, I think the simple, the easiest thing we can do is assume that any person who is in our community is a part of our community, right? And I think when we don't do that, right, that is an immediate microaggression. And, you know, I would just encourage folks for whom the concept of a microaggression is a new concept. It was for me, I think, you know, before like 6 months ago. Those microaggressions, right? That like what happens when Leasia experiences that, and she will, right? He's going to experience that at Temple Beth Shalom. The sort of multiple and culminating impact of lots of those interactions has a significant impact and causes trauma for her. And she's already experienced a ton of trauma. And so I think, you know, our responsibility is to not do that, right? And to like learn that, well, we actually have several Black members of our congregation, and let's assume that, you know, they're actually part of our community. And, you know, and the same thing for any other Jews of color that come and visit.
As she grows up, I also think through the religious school experience and think about the way we represent what Jews look like. Mm-hmm. And making sure that there are books, slides, whatever, that are representative of the increasing diversity of the Jewish world, which, by the way, has been diverse for a long time, except that we don't get to see that because we don't live in the Middle East. And the fact is that there, you know, actually historically, there are, if one considers the term Jews of color to be people of Middle Eastern descent. The majority of Jews have been Jews of color, but that's not the American experience. Like everything else in America, it's Eurocentric. So, and also, it strikes me that there should be room for us to address the intersectionality between being black and being Jewish, and that bringing into our school and our educational system, I guess what's been dubbed Black history, just as a matter of history, is also something that we should be figuring out how to do within the curriculum. You know, the issue of the Jewish community during the Civil War, it's complicated. It's not clear cut. And that's worth talking about and worth discussing. And as you're raising these issues, sorry, I know this is your interview, but as you're raising these issues, it's coming to mind that there are clearly concrete ways that we can be a more welcoming institution to Jews of color.
I think not shying away from conversations about race. You know, it's treating people as if they are all members and welcoming and not singling out. So that idea of kind of treating everyone the same, but then also acknowledging that the intersection of being Jewish and being black or being of color is a tough place to navigate, and we don't want to pretend that it's not there. And so I think it's important to kind of bring up those areas where race is it's a natural fit to talk about. And that's important for all of us to be doing. And then it's really important that we don't put the members of color on the spot and saying, and what is it like to be black? And what is it like to be a Jew of color? But just bringing those things up in really kind of integrative ways. So it's not like, oh, now we are doing the,
right. So
the race
right.
week.
Yeah, we're not doing Black History Month.
Right. It's February, so of course we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, along those lines, I found something. You noted that she is descendant of kings. Do you have anything specific on that, or just in general? I'm just curious.
I think that when I listen to Black people talk about themselves as individuals being their ancestors' wildest dreams, and that they are descendants of king and queens, right? Like a clear student of history sees the just tremendous traditions in Africa, and how much of our culture has been impacted by the kings and queens in Africa and all the inventions and innovation that existed in Africa and in the Black community in the United States. But to the previous point, we only sort of talk about that in February. And I think the point of including that in the email is to encourage people, and I'm saying this as much to myself as I am to folks who are watching this, to see her assets first, see the tremendous potential that she has, instead of doing what frankly we've done too much, and I have done in my life, is to see deficits and to see these challenges and disparities that exist that are real and that need to be addressed, and sort of projecting those on individuals. So I think that's what I was trying to remind myself and remind us about.
And I think that translates well into welcoming diversity in the Jewish community and seeing the tremendous asset that having diverse people in the community has.
Sorry.
Yeah, we got one too. Well, if you've seen, because you joined us for Friday night services, the dog's like right here.
Yeah.
And trumpeting that as something that's positive for the Jewish people. This has been a mantra in regard to being inclusive about non-Jews within the Jewish community over these last couple of decades, particularly, and that could be expanded. That could totally be expanded. Okay. So you're going to be undertaking some efforts, if I understand it, to try to increase this communication by gathering folks who are in the similarly situated, raising children of color.
Well, you're disclosing one of my many hobbies, and you may not always know about. And but yeah, yeah. I mean, we're not the only transracial family at Temple Beth Shalom, and you know, I think part of our responsibility is to help be in allyship with other families that look like ours to hopefully continue to build the culture of our community, everything from religious school education to services to what we do with social justice and advocacy. So yeah, I mean, I think that's something we'd love to do.
Well, I want to encourage you in those efforts, and I want to encourage you to communicate with not only obviously Jordan, but myself, Rabbi Simon, with your religious school teachers as the year goes by, starting this year with Lori, and then as the years go by, this is not, as we all know, this is not an area of high sensitivity at the moment. We're all learning, is my point, and we can only learn if we listen. And we totally appreciate the fact that you're approaching this next stage of parenthood, because you've been at this a while, but approaching this next stage of parenthood with such thoughtfulness. And we, as a community, look forward to sharing this journey with you, and doing what we need and can do to let Lee Asia know that she is a valued member of the Jewish community and of Temple Beth Shalom. And appreciate your help and your thoughtfulness in those efforts. We'll try.
If I could just say, Rabbi, I think we're optimistic. I mean, we have experienced being an interfaith couple, the inclusivity that you've shown to our family before we had kids, any kids at all. And, so I think the potential is there for us to be a truly welcoming and inclusive community. I think the challenge now is with race, there is no passing, right? So we can pass as an interfaith family, partly because Katie makes an incredible kugel. It'll be different now, but I think we can do it. I think the one thing I just also want to say is I'm going to look to our youth group and our young adults at Temple Beth Shalom for leadership. I don't think there's a better example of a more inclusive group of congregants in our community. The teens who are finding their leadership in our community. I'm excited to work with them and really follow their lead to make sure that our community is truly inclusive.
Thank you for that as well. And I know this is, I really appreciate this time, because I know this is crazy time. You're trying to do your own work. You got kids who are online, and
hopefully, I don't know where they are right now.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, who knows?
That's why you buy big houses, right? They disappear. Anyway, thank you both. Looking forward to spending many years together of good health and happiness, and watching all of your children grow, and watching our community evolve into the best that it can be. So thanks a lot, Lashana Tova, and a healthy and happy 5781. Thank you.
Thanks, Rabbi.